Okay, being around here, we'll call the meeting to order. First thing we'll do is approval of minutes of May 20th, 2021. Any questions or comments?
No.
I'll move them.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Hey, all those in favor?
Richard, I.
Oh, aye.
Larry, aye. Okay, next up is I welcome Art for joining us tonight in regards to the Jacob study for wages.
Thanks for coming, Art.
Yes.
You're welcome.
A couple questions that we have. Does anybody want to start off?
I just want to say that when we talked last time, I also mentioned that Jim Palermo was part of that. So I asked him to join us. I see he's muted, but he may chime in.
Okay.
Can he unmute? Is that on his part? That's,
I think
he
there
muted
it is.
himself?
I
Okay.
can unmute, but
Okay.
I'm here,
Very good.
moral support for my friend and colleague, Art Lawrence. That's my main reason.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, Jim, as well.
Well, thank
Yes,
you,
Jen,
Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to pull up the Jacob study real quick?
I'll start if anyone else, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
My question was the scoring aspect. How do you incorporate the scoring into the new step system? Do you have a scoring in place, or is that something we need to implement?
No, I mean, the scoring really comes out in the grades. So it's grades and then steps. The intent here was to give a financial future for basically all the non-union folks who have contracts and so on and so forth. I thought it behooved us as a town to let our employees know what their future is like, and also let the town know of what's coming up. We've had a history of not giving raises, and that I don't think is acceptable. And everybody tells me, well, how do you afford it and this and that? Well, how do you afford the school? How do you afford the highway department? How do you afford the police department? That's you factor it in, and that's what it is. So that's what I did. I took we used the scoring to put people into a grade, and then I took the low and the high, and being just a double engineer here, divided it out so it came up with a percentage that was close to what we were seeing in the schools and police department, and it worked out to be a 14 steps, and that's how I did it.
And then, Art, to get to the scale that you put together from the scale that we're currently using, how would you recommend that we do that? Collapse them?
I never used that scale whatsoever. That scale has no, as Jim can verify, we used to shake our head at that scale, and that scale, I don't know how far back it went. And we used to just sort of use it as a very slight guideline that, maybe people should be brought in around 50% of it. The steps that I set up had no bearing whatsoever to that older system.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like the grade levels, if somebody has a higher degree than somebody else, say they're starting new from a previous person, we would just go up a step then, as far as not trying to figure out where they're gonna be in that.
No, well, I mean, you can do it any way you want, but, in the real world, in the commercial world, you hire people at whatever you can hire them at, and depending on, what the situation is out there, and believe me, it's getting tougher and tougher. And the salaries are going to go up and up, of course, inflation and everything else. Once you bring a person in, that sort of sets the step, and then from that point on, every year they go up a step. It's no different. I think any of you who work in, again, the real world, we always had steps in every place that I worked. And you knew next year you were going to get a step, and you might get a merit on top of that step, but that's how it worked. And I think it's very, very commonly used everywhere. As far as the figuring out the when we sat down and scored everybody, we scored the job, obviously, not the person. And, we had, it's a very old scoring method, but it's the same one Jacobs used, and we have been using it in town for quite a number of years, and I've seen it in other places. And believe me, I'm not an HR person. Like I say, I'm a retired engineer. I just learned a few things from being on the personnel board. Actually, most places I worked, HR hated me, and I hated them. I had more problems with HR than I ever did with any of my designs or any of the people that work for me. So, but that's another story.
So Art, the Jacobs study was based on the National Position Evaluation Plan like we already use?
Yes.
All right. So my next question is the point value.
Yep.
How did you incorporate, or whoever incorporated into the steps? Because clearly they're going to change the numbers.
Again, it's not the steps, it's the grades. You first take the job description, you put that job description into grades, and there are 6 of them. And all that depends on levels of education, levels of experience, the particular job, et cetera, et cetera. Once you decided that, then in each grade, I took the low grade, the high, the low salary and the high salary, and amortized it over 14 steps.
So incrementally, like for grade 1,
right,
it's 3.70 from step, in order to get from step 1 to step 14 on an annual basis.
That's pretty as close as I could get.
Okay.
You're absolutely right, and that was again based on what sort of the average I was seeing in the school and the police and dispatchers and highway. Now again, that can be manipulated and handled in any way you see possible. That to me seemed to be a fair way of doing it.
Should we have some kind of template that shows us what the points equal? How many the point range for what grade?
I sent you all the scoring, so you should have that.
As part of this document?
Then
No, I don't think it's in the document, but it's I don't remember. I got it here. Let me see if I put it in or not. But if it isn't, I can. Hold on, let me look through here.
Art, wasn't it in the instrument itself that X number of points would mean that you'd be placed at a particular grade?
Yeah, you're right, Jim. It was in the actual sheets. Robin, you know the sheets we used to use. We had the booklet, and then we had the sheet.
But aren't those based on our prior steps. We had 13 grades.
No, we're not talking steps. Forget steps. We're talking grades. Grades.
How
And
many, 10 grades here. 10 grades, 13 steps. We're not talking steps, but, well, we're going from 10 to 6 steps. I mean, grades. Sorry, I keep getting it backwards, but that's what I mean, the grades. So clearly the numbers have to change somewhere.
well, they have. That's the whole point. With James Carter.
Correct. We don't have a list of them and how to get there.
What you're looking at there, it has no relationship whatsoever. That has nothing to do with job descriptions. It has nothing to do with scoring. I don't know where it came from. I don't know how they came up with it. That's why we scored everybody, and that's why we made sure all the job descriptions were rewritten to bring them up to date, and we actually use Jacob's template to a certain degree, but his study was poorly done, and his study had a lot of problems, using other towns and so on and so forth. So you'd read the job description and he'd say the town of, which was not our town. So we had everybody go back, all the department heads and all, and I think Francine and I know Jim remembers this, and they went through the job descriptions, made sure they were accurate. We reviewed them, made whatever changes that had to be made, and then we scored them. That set up the grades. And then I sort of artificially sat down and just determined what the steps would be for each of the grades based on, again, Jacob's study of 6 towns and that were similar to our town. And the only thing I did was goose that up a little bit because it was done a number of years ago. And there had been a couple of raises, a couple of 2% raises during that time. So I increased his numbers, his low salary, high salary, medium salary, benchmark salary. I raised that by 4%. So that's all that was based on his study initially. And I would recommend that another wage study be done. I didn't have the, credentials to go out and ask these various towns and such to give me their data. So it'd be interesting to see what the new ranges are out in the real world.
Oh, okay. And you got Jacobs through PBPC?
No, Jake. This was a community grant, a state grant that Heather had gotten for us, the former TA, and we had 3 studies done: one for the fire department, one for the government of Southampton, and one for the personnel. And he came with that one. I think it was a $10,000 grant.
Okay.
Okay.
So Art, can I ask about the job descriptions? They were done in the presence of department heads, so everybody signed off on them?
They did. I believe the select boards. Did the select board sign off? I'm not sure if they did not, but yeah, they did.
And that was done as recently as when? 2017, or was it done again in 2020?
It was done over I don't know, Jim, about at least a year to get all of them in, and somewhere around 2019 to 2020.
Yeah, there's a range.
So they're pretty recent then.
Yeah, they're pretty accurate, I think. I don't think there's been too many major changes to them.
Okay. And all of these, when you say the 4%, that's been added to that, in essence, then these numbers that we're looking at in the various grades and the ranges are, they've been compiled, including that 4% through 2020.
2020, yes, sir. Yeah, and I believe his original one, I have it down here somewhere in his study. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, he did his work on fiscal year 2017. Jacobs did that. He compiled his salary data, and then for that I upped it 4% because we had up to 2019 we had a couple of 2% raises.
Okay.
And what you have, what's in this report, unfortunately, the current employee salaries is still accurate because we didn't, from 2020 to 2021, there was no increase.
As accurate as I could get them, there might be some differences. I mean, this is a quite a unique situation we have here, as everybody knows. Some people work 30 hours, some work 31, some work 32, some work 40. It's all over the place. So I tried to, and Robin helped me here with getting some of this data together. We tried to do as best we could to bring it out to an hourly basis for everybody.
Right.
So I think I, again, sort of amortized it over an hourly basis just to make it fair.
Yeah, so that we sort of had the same yardstick to compare one another.
As close as I could get.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, my thought is, how do we take the scale that we have, or look at the grade levels that we have, and translate them from the number that we have, which is what, 10 or 12, to 6, and how we do that and move so that this scale that you put together is something that's relevant and matches.
I don't have the chart in front of me, but weren't some of the lower grades deleted because they were below minimum wage?
Yeah, that's the old chart, yeah.
Yeah, so that's how we got up to 6.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Because the lower, and then we I shouldn't say we, because Art did the math, but I think there were 2 instances where the state raised the minimum wage, and that was passed along to our employees, even though we weren't obligated to pay the state minimum wage, or the federal, I guess it was maybe. But we weren't obligated to do it, but the town decided to do it. And so that caused us to upgrade the scale also.
Mm-hmm. And we did it again this year, Jim, to 1350.
Yeah. So I really don't know. I don't have the scale in front of me. I have no idea if it's accurate or not. But
so if that were the case, though, and we eliminated 4 grades, it sounds like they were eliminated because of pay, not because of job description.
They were below minimum wage. So
what happened to their jobs?
Well, their jobs remained, but we just raised their pay to meet at least the minimum wage.
Yeah, and remember that's the old chart, and I mean, you guys can do what you want. I mean, I'm trying to throw that thing out because it was a total waste of time looking at it and trying to figure it out. I thought Jacobs did a pretty decent job, as we did, by scoring and coming up with a whole new grade level, and throwing 14 down to 6. Well, 14 was I thought was crazy. 6 makes a lot of sense, and if you look at the way it works out there, it makes a lot of sense if you look at it carefully. Going from a custodian to a police chief, I think 6 grades make sense. And then on top of that, then we would have the steps. But again, whatever you guys decide to do, but that's the way I looked at it, and I thought was the fairest way of grouping the people. You got department heads, you've got super department heads, so on and so forth.
So I guess then our first thing we need to do is to pare down the 10 grades and get them into the proper categories, right?
That's what I sort of tried to do in the report. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what are you paring down? I mean, I don't understand.
He's already got that, Ken.
What's that?
He's already got that in there as the grade levels.
Right, but I just heard Robin say we have 10 grades.
Yes, we have. Our current is 10.
So
The Jacob study is 6. Now, how do we break down those points, the score ranges to equal grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 through 6? Because they start with grade 7, 251 to 280 is grade 7, and so on. So we just have to figure out a way to incorporate the points.
It's there. I mean, just take all the stuff I gave you and look through it. Look through all the the scoring, and I don't think you need to go. You certainly don't have to go through and score stuff again. It's there, and it should pop right out. But whatever.
But this.
You're muted, Francine. We can't hear you.
I turned it off because the dog was barking.
Yeah.
What I was saying, but you already did that. You've collapsed it into 6. You redistributed everyone into these categories, different. So that job is already done for us. It's just. To me, it's very logical. Makes good sense.
I don't see. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, we based it on our own scoring and also Jacob's. I don't see anything really out of whack on those six grades. Maybe there's always a person here and there that could be in one versus the other, but that's the way we scored it, and we tried to again be as fair as possible, and scored the job, not the people. That's the key thing. We scored the job, and we were careful about doing that.
Gotcha.
And spent a lot of time doing it too.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? No.
Well, thanks for hearing me out. I appreciate the time, and good luck. If there's anything I can do in the future, don't hesitate to give me a call.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Alex. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Art.
Both of you.
Thank you, Jim.
Bye,
Thank
Jim.
you very much.
Nice to meet you. Have a nice
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks,
Night.
Jim. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Anybody want to have any discussion on this?
Yeah. I'd like to see what he was talking about that he sent along. I don't know what that
what
is.
he's talking about. I don't have anything other. I don't know if he's talking about the national plan. The first page has scoring points in it, score range, and it's from 7 to 19. That's what we currently use, but he didn't give us anything. I don't have any Jacob study information of how he came about the 6 grades, honestly. I mean, I can forward you guys all the emails, but there are attachments with prior scoring, job descriptions. I don't recall seeing anything with the Jacob study. I will double check and I will send them all to you so you guys can look at it as well.
Ken, was your kind of mathematical orientation. How would you approach this?
Well, I mean, if I recall the last meeting, you said that the board has adopted this, correct?
We did, but what we're trying to do was make an accommodation of what the scale is that has been used. I thought, I guess it was recent because Art said he didn't use it. So I'm a little confused now. I thought this was the chart that we've been using was long-standing. He's saying that it isn't.
We've never used a Jacob study.
Yeah.
No. This other chart, the one scale that
That's what we should be using. However, people started in the middle. There was no rhyme or reason because it's so out of whack, honestly. It's why I believe they've had people start at certain rates.
Yes, and we adopted this because we were looking for some roadmap of this is where we are, this is where we would like to go, and incrementally we'll get there. That's why we need a scale. Because we're not going to go, year one from the proposed minimum to the proposed benchmark. That would be like in some instances a $5 an hour raise, which we couldn't afford. But we need to develop those steps in between to get us within reasonable time from what the proposed minimum is, if they're not already there, to the proposed maximum over a time period so that people can see what they could be earning after 5 years, 10 years, whatever. We need to lay it out.
I thought you were using this Jacob study to bring up people to the benchmark because there were two positions noted that were very low, so you brought them up. So what about the other positions?
Well, that's it. I mean, we were trying to get the people that we targeted were people that weren't even at the minimum. That was the first step. Now we need to move forward and say, well, how do we look then at everyone, and how do we get on with some kind of a plan that we can predict, somewhere into the future that, it's not every year when we do the budget, the salary shouldn't be a crapshoot. We need to have more structure to it, and that's what we're looking at. If somehow, that we have to update the numbers because things change, time change, we'll do that. But I mean, just looking and saying, here we are, this is where we are in comparison to minimum, mid, and maximum in relation to our employees, and how far are we off? And this pretty much tells us all of it, because the current salaries are correct. And that's unfortunate in some instances.
I'm going to send you everything from Art. It says from Ron Lauren because it came from Ron Lauren's computer. Art sent it just so you know that's what it is. There's 5 emails with several attachments.
Okay.
I'll do that this evening.
So I guess I go back to my question of how do we have 10 grades when this is saying we should only have 6? How do we determine what happens to those that are in the 10 that shouldn't be in the 6, or should be in the 6?
Well, if we decide we could recategorize everybody, I mean, all the positions are accounted for.
Right. I think there was one that was missing though, right? If I recall. But anyways, so we can take all of the 10 and modify that 10 and recategorize them so that they all fall within 6 grade levels. I mean, you have to do that first before we can utilize these ranges.
That would be one, yes. I really wish we had some outside expertise, you know, to bring us up to speed. Well, anyway, so.
Any word from the consortium?
I just got an email. I've been after them because we've heard nothing. So yesterday I wrote and said, when? So we should be starting soon. He didn't give me a lot of details in terms of what we'll be doing, but we're working with Southampton, Westhampton, and Chester. And they have to lay out the scope of what they're going to be doing for us.
Right.
The grant has some value, you know, how this works, and I explained it, is the money goes to them, and then they allocate their staff based on that money, which isn't necessarily a full-time person assigned to this. There are 3 towns, and we've got to come together, express what our needs are, and then formulate what we hope will be a feasibility plan so that we can move into something more permanent in the next year. But this is all like the feasibility portion of it. And once we get rolling, I mean, once we know what, I'll ask if everyone is interested to have a guy, whoever is assigned to us from PVPC, to come and talk to us at one of our meetings. I think we all need to have some input into that.
Right.
Do we know what the custodian's making now in an hour? Do we have a custodian?
We do.
Yep.
Is it not on here?
I don't have the list.
It's $15.30 an hour, and he asked not to increase his line.
Right. Right.
For retirement purposes. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, he can't earn over a certain level.
Okay.
So that was his decision.
So he's making $15.30 an hour?
I think it's $15.30.
Okay. So this grade level 1 would come up.
So is this not accurate? Current employee 1601, is that? Maybe I'm incorrect.
Well, let me look.
Yeah, the wage study says 1601, so I may be incorrect on that.
Okay. I have among my papers here something that we got. Yeah.
1601 is correct. I just found it
Okay.
on that spreadsheet that we had.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's correct.
So the next process is to get these guys up to date. Is that
Right. Well, to get a plan in place, and that was why we started with the people who really were off this chart, and I mean had the most significant variance from their current salary to the proposed minimum salary, and that's where we started.
And the proposed benchmark represents what?
Where they should be for this fiscal year.
Well, that's a good question we could ask Art. I'm thinking that would be kind of mid-range of where, after a few years perhaps. And again, this all should be updated annually. These numbers shouldn't stay the same. They need to be updated as we give increases, as cost of living goes up, and all those other factors.
So the proposed range is actually pretty much in the middle of this chart here.
Benchmark, yes.
And then the proposed max, 2691.
Right. And if you look, there are people who are at the max. There are people who exceed the max. Okay.
Wait a minute. I gotta get my calculator.
So, to me, it's the most objective tool we have in the absence of anything else. And if we really want to live up to, I think the commitment that the select board took, which was we need to make adjustments to people's salaries so that they're earning decent wages, but we can't do everybody at the same time because our budget can't support that. But we need to look at having a plan in place. What are we going to do from one year to the next?
Well, you can't pick and choose every year.
No, but I think this is an objective way of looking at it. I mean, the people who are the furthest behind should be the people who get the attention first. And then we move along. Then we take the next set of people who are the next, with less of a discrepancy. I'm not saying that we took care of everything because we couldn't. And we may not even be able to do what we proposed if, the override doesn't pass. But all we can do is plan and hope that other people agree with us on that. But it's up to the town ultimately.
All right. Just indulge me here for a minute. Let's stick with this grade level one we were just talking about. We're looking at the custodian of 1601. I want to make sure I understand what I probably should have done this while Art was with us. So at 1601, the proposed salary minimum, that 13.62% means what? That he is higher than the proposed minimum by 13%, 13.6?
Right. Yes.
All right. And so then we get out to the benchmark, and we're basically saying that he's below that benchmark by 10%?
That's what these figures are saying, yes. Again, and if we were to put, if benchmark translated, let's say, into number of years, if that's how we're going to use a scale, how many years would that be? So, like I said, we have to have a plan that go there incrementally. They're not going to jump all at one time.
Right.
And that scale should address the increment between minimum, benchmark, max. That's how I think about it. And like I said, then it gets adjusted periodically as we look at what salaries are elsewhere and how do we remain competitive.
If we're going to do, I think if we're going to do this, I think it needs to be done across the board. I think if we pick and choose, there's going to be a lot of animosity and there's going to be a lot of.
You can't give step raises to the certain group that you picked first. and then implement step raises for the next year, for the next group, it has to be across the board or it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, then we can't do as much for anyone. We'll just have to do less for more. And that's how it'll be. I
Well-
guess. So I'm not the decision
Either
maker.
we implement it and we follow it, or we just keep on winging it.
Well,
Well, but the timelines are prescribed now. I mean, you're not going to be able to implement anything. I mean, you can set up the scales and everything, but you're not going to implement anything until next fiscal year.
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
So you got plenty of time.
And again,
It has to be a priority to budget it.
Right.
So it has to be a priority to figure it out to move forward.
Right.
It has to be a group priority. Finance, select board,
Yeah.
PPC. We all have to work together on this, to be fair.
Right. Well,
and you know how easy this is, getting the budget through.
Well, I don't not agree with these rates. Actually, I think they're pretty fair. There's a few that were off, we already mentioned. We need to figure out a way to score and have a range for these 6 grades.
Yeah.
And that's what he said he had. So I guess I thought that they went from this, I pulled this up because this was what I made it on pink so I could find it. This wage classification, the charts that you guys did.
That is our last approved wage. That's what we're supposed to be using.
I'm sorry, what?
That's what we have been using. We
Yes.
should be using it.
And I thought that Art used it, but he said they didn't. So I don't know how this came into being.
yeah, he's basically saying that should have been thrown away. If I heard him right.
But he couldn't without implementing a new one, is pretty much. They didn't follow it.
You know, we may have to go back to him with more questions, I'm sure.
I guess we should have asked him if he had the original Jacob study. They had to tell him how they came to the 6
Yeah.
grades and how the scoring was done using our same system.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, how did he go from that to this?
Yeah. Because even the points that you earn for each category won't make sense, I don't think. I don't know.
But I guess I don't. You mentioned rescoring. I'm not sure that that's within the game plan at this point, because those job descriptions, regardless of where they are, have already been scored.
Right, I'm not for rescoring, just that anyone new coming in, if we have a job, how we score
Yeah.
that, implement it into our wage scale. I do not want to rescore unless it's requested.
Well, even then, if the job description hasn't changed,
Right.
I don't think that's apropos.
And the way that I'm seeing it, well, the way I took it from him is they didn't use the point scale. They just went by, you start at grade 1, you start at step 1, and that's it.
Right, there has to be a way to figure out how to get there. How do we get there? This position is a grade, but how? How did you score that?
Yeah, we need to know how.
All right. We need to ask him that question.
I don't think he did score it. I think from what he said is they categorize them correct? I think that's what he said.
That's what he said, yeah.
Categorized them and they pulled them into 6 different grades
Yeah.
based on similar
Right.
job actions. Hey, Randall.
Hey, Randall.
Hi.
I don't,
Sorry I'm late. I was running and the miles felt good today.
That's okay.
We
Calm
haven't
down.
gotten to you yet. So
We didn't get to you yet.
yeah, so we need, if you could send up a few, the questions that we have about a little more clarity on this, Robin, that would be great.
Okay, so
Yeah, we could maybe email them to him in advance and then look at them and then.
yeah, I'm fine with an email answer from him if he can come up with.
Yeah.
Okay, what are the questions you want me to ask him?
About how they collapse the grades into, from what we have on that scoring system to this.
I just feel like I asked him that and I didn't get the answer that we wanted.
yeah, I'd be interested
I
in
did too.
what
All
his,
right, I'll ask him anyways, scoring.
be interested in what his definition of benchmark is.
I'll ask him if we can have the original
Yes, please. That was my,
definition of benchmark. I think the definition of benchmark is where you should be.
Yeah, just like
You
clarification.
want his
yeah.
definition. Okay?
Yeah, the questions we did, I mean, I think the answers were a little vague and I think he was getting a little frustrated with us being that we're not understanding where he's coming up with his
I guess he
concepts.
wanted an answer to the question and he didn't have it, so that's
Yeah.
not his fault. It's just, we don't
Yeah.
have the answer that we need.
Okay, any other discussion?
There's no one on this committee now that was a part of this,
No,
right?
No.
No.
Okay. All right.
Okay. We want to make a motion to have Robin send out those emails.
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Richard, I.
Cole, aye.
Slattery, aye.
And
Okay. Well, PCFs. We'll start with the police department resignation, if you don't mind, Robin. Being
No,
the
not at all. I am recused.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
recuse.
Alexandria Capon Parizo, she's resigning, took a position elsewhere. Just if we accept it.
I'll make a motion to accept. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I motion to accept the resignation.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Richard, I.
Slattery, aye.
Cole,
And
aye.
I.
Okay. Next one is Robin Richard, new hire. Part-time benefited for the highway department. 25 hours a week, it's $17.81. Any questions? No? I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay. I'll second it.
All those in favor? Slattery, aye.
Bull eye.
Tishman, aye.
Okay.
And let me just see, the start date is,
Basically, whenever I can get her in there, I think, I'm not sure if the applicant has given, I think she's given notice, but I want to make sure she's comfortable with her start date. So between whenever she's comfortable starting and whenever the select board or whoever the last person is who has to sign off, I will be so glad to have somebody in that office. I am drowning. So I just, whenever, please.
I had one question about the dual employee status. What does that refer to?
Dual employee status?
Yeah, no, I think that was mentioned on Robin's. Wasn't that in your
I sent an email
narrative somewhere?
to speak on this, if it's okay with everyone, that I contacted ethics, and they said once I'm hired, I'll have to fill out a disclosure stating that I work for the both departments. It's considered a second job, even though it's a non-pay
Voluntary position, yeah.
So you have to disclose it, and I won't be able to speak about it for any meeting.
Okay.
so you're saying your job on the PPB is considered?
Yeah, it's considered another job.
I do the same thing for my position on the Agriculture Commission. I have to fill out ethics papers and file them with the town clerk.
Okay. Well, what confused me was a second employee, because really the committee is not an employment.
Unfortunately, the ethics committee doesn't see it that way.
The state considers us employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That do.
Okay. I wasn't sure whether it had something to do with the highway department and the transfer station, which confused me. Okay, I'm all set.
Counts.
Okay, so it passes. Welcome aboard again, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, you're welcome, Randall.
Thanks, Randall.
Have a good night.
Is that it for me?
That's it for you.
Sure.
All right.
Wanna
Have a
say
good night.
something else? Have a good night.
Nope. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. We have already discussed the wage scale. Go on to the rules and regulation.
What I'd like to do is what we have so far, cross out, make the changes and send it to everybody and start reviewing it one at a time.
I think that would probably be the best, instead of having it listed like it is. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, that way we can get a move on it.
Yeah. What I'm going to suggest, I don't know if it works, if you want to work it this way, but on the bylaw committee, where we're making changes, we leave the original text there and we put whatever we plan to substitute it with, either in italics or bold, so you could see what you had and what you're going to. And the reason we're required to do that is because all of this stuff, whatever we make changes, has to go to an attorney and then ultimately to the Attorney General. I don't know about this book, but okay. And they need to see the original and then the revision. So doing it instead of having them side by side as two separate documents, here's the old one, here's the new one, it might be easier to embed those recommended.
So what I started to do is strike throughs, and then in red writing right next to it, what I changed, so you can see exactly what went and what's coming in.
That's fine.
Added, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some distinction, that's fine.
Does that sound like a good plan with everybody else?
Yeah, I don't have much to add tonight about it, but I'm happy to do that, and we can start going through it one by one. Be easier to look at that way. Because Ken wasn't here really when we first started working on it, so
Right.
that'll give him a chance to put his 2 cents in.
Yeah.
We know you want to.
I'll try.
Okay. Any discussion as far as the rules and regulations or comments besides that?
Nope.
No,
Okay. Then,
So our next meeting's scheduled for the 24th. I know, Chrissy, you probably won't attend,
no, I won't be able to be there. Yeah.
but I'll send you everything that you need, just so you know what we're working on.
Yeah. And, yeah, I'll still be kind of like out of it then, but yeah.
Okay, so
Try to
all of
get
our,
back.
while we were meeting here, I sent out the emails from Art. So if anybody sees anything with that scoring system, please let me know, because I'm curious to look at it, if there is one.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
All right. Any new business? Okay. Then I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second
Second.
that. Okay,
All those in favor?
Richard, I.
Cole, aye.
Lottery, aye. Okay, have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thanks.
You too.
Everything goes through surgery, Chris.
Take care, yes.
Thank you.
Best of luck, Christie.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Have a great weekend, guys.
You too.
Carol.
Bye.